Well, today on Backcountry College, we're going to talk a little bit more about survival gear. We're going to talk about something I don't generally carry with me unless I'm in a situation where I'm way back in the backcountry or somewhere where I might get stranded for a couple days or more, and that's a snare. Now, I used to do a lot of trapping when I was a kid, and I'd set a lot of snares. And so I can tell you from firsthand experience that these things are extremely effective. And they also don't discriminate. These things will catch a dog or a deer just as easily as they'll catch a raccoon or a rabbit, so you need to be very conscious about where you set them. Now, there's certain techniques that you can use to avoid catching non-target animals, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But if you go to setting snares, be very careful about it because, like I said, they will catch anything and everything. And believe it or not, this is 1/16 inch cable. Believe it or not, this thing will hold a whitetail or a mule deer or a small bear. All right, so to get started, I'm going to show you how to make some of these snares. They're very easy to make, they're quick to make, and you can pick up the supplies at the local hardware store. All you need is, for a survival type of snare, all you need is 1/16 inch cable, 7x7 cable, some small flat washers, and some little cable crimps. Now, generally, when you see folks running snares for general purposes, general trapping purposes, they're going to be using 1/8 inch cable. The reason for that is because a 1/8 inch cable holds a little bit better loop at a larger loop. You try to make a big loop out of this 1/16 inch cable, and it's going to start sagging a little bit. You don't want that. You want a nice round loop when you set your snare. The reason I like 1/16 inch cable is because it does allow you to run a little bit smaller loop. And when, in a survival situation, oftentimes it's those small critters that you're going to be after, rabbits and things like that. So to get started, what we're going to do is going to take some of these flat washers and we're going to make snare locks out of them. So what I want to do is drill 2 holes in these things opposite one another, and then we're going to bend this washer over into a 90 degree, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so you're going to need 2 flat washers that are bent over and have them drilled out, and you're going to need 2 cable clamps per snare. I'm going to start off just by clamping one end. Then I'm going to take that, bend it about a 90 degree, like that. Then I'm going to take the other end, I'm going to thread it through one of my snare locks. You want to come in from the outside, from the top side, do like that, and then you want to bring this back in here so that these 2 cables cross, just like that. That's how you want the thing set up. Now we're going to take this tag in, we're going to go ahead and throw another snare lock on there just to act as a swivel. Clamp that side off. And that thing is done. So the way this thing works is we'll set up a wire to hold it on a trail or however we're setting it. something comes through there, puts pressure on it, which releases the snare lock there and causes it to cinch down. And as this gets tighter, this little snare lock will flip around like that, and it puts this cable in a bind and it won't come loose. You see how that's locked down there like that. So it's worth spending a little bit of time looking around and finding the very best spot to set your snare. And right here I've got a nice little run that's coming through here, and we're going to go ahead and set our snare right here in this run, so we're going to catch whatever comes down here. Now, to set your snare, you're going to have to figure out what you're targeting. So if you're after rabbits, jackrabbits or something like that, you're going to want to set a little bit smaller loop, so maybe 4-inch loop or so, something like that. And you're going to need to place it, depending on the animal again, higher or lower off the ground. So I'm going to set this snare for coons. So I'm going to have about a 6-inch loop, and I'm going to place it so the bottom is about 3 inches off the ground. Now I've got a wire here, and I've bent the bottom end down here so that when I stick that in the ground, it's not going to turn. And I've got the top here bent in kind of an N shape or a Z shape, and that's going to be what holds my snare. So I'm going to place that right in there like that. Now that's a little bit too big. Let's tighten that up a little bit. Now that is going to be what holds my snare. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that in the ground, bend my wire wherever I need to. Now the other end of my snare, I'm going to go ahead and just attach to something nearby, a tree or a big rock or something like that, and paracord will work just fine for that. But when an animal comes through here, he's going to hit that, and that's going to close down on him. It's going to lock down, and you're going to have him there when you come back. So I've got a little bit different setup here, and this is a really good example of how to avoid catching non-target animals. In this case, it's deer. We've got a nice little trail going through here. I know that it's deer using this trail, so if I would generally avoid setting a snare on a trail that I know deer are using, but if you're forced to, this is a good way to avoid catching them. All I've done is taken this log here, propped it up against this little fir tree. It's about 18 inches off the ground, and when a deer comes through here, this is too low for him to duck under, so he's simply just going to jump over it, and any smaller animals, raccoons, rabbits, coyotes, are going to duck underneath it, and that's going to put their head right through this noose. So to wrap things up, if you do happen to find yourself in an extended survival situation, one of these snares is going to come in very, very handy. They coil up very small, they don't take up much room or much weight, and so it just might be worth throwing one in your kit. As always, anything that you have in your survival kit, whether it be gear or skills, you need to practice those things. But with something like this, you're probably going to need to get a trapping license, and you're going to need to check on your state regs because different states are going to regulate them in different ways. But get out there and practice, set some snares so that if the time ever does come when you need something like this, you'll be prepared. So with that, we'll see you next time. Don't forget to check us out at backcountryhunters.org and on our Facebook page, and we'll see you there.